Hey everyone, so I want to talk about something that messed with my head for years, net worth. We all hear about it, right? Assets minus liabilities equals net worth. Sounds simple, sounds logical, but let me tell you, that number can be a real trickster, especially if you are like I was chasing the dream of getting rich quick. Back in my early 20s, I was all about that number. I had this idea that if my net worth grew, I was winning, I was making progress, I was on the path to financial freedom. I mean, who doesn't he want that, right? I came from an ordinary background, no fancy financial education, just a burning desire to make money and make it fast. So I saw the headlines, heard the whispers about hot stocks, crypto booms, and whatever else promised high returns. I jumped in, head first, with my hard-earned savings, blindly following trends, buying whatever was popular, and listening to every piece of unsolicited advice I could find. I remember this one time, a friend of a friend, the type, was absolutely convinced about this obscure stock. Said it was going to the moon. I didn't do any research. I didn't understand the company. I just saw dollar signs and the promise of that net worth number going up, up, up. I poured a significant chunk of my savings into it, convinced I was smart, convinced I was about to hit it big. Guess what? It didn't go to the moon. It crashed. I watched my money evaporate, and that net worth number I was so proud of, it plummeted faster than I could blink. That wasn't an isolated incident either. I fell into pretty much every trap you can imagine. Short-term speculation, trying to time the market, chasing the next big thing. I even got caught up in a couple of those too. Good too. Be true schemes. Yeah, I know, hindsight is 20/20ths, but when you are young and naive and desperate to prove yourself, those high-yield promises sound incredibly convincing. I remember the pit in my stomach, the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety each time I lost money. It was a punch to the gut. I was literally throwing away my savings. The money I had worked so hard for, I was emotional, I was impulsive, and I had absolutely no risk management strategy. I just kept doubling down, hoping to recover my losses, which of course just led to bigger losses. It was a vicious cycle of chasing, losing, and getting more and more frustrated. My net worth became a roller coaster, mostly going down, and it was draining me mentally and financially. After losing a significant amount of what I had managed to save, I hit rock bottom. I was deflated, embarrassed, and completely lost. That is when I realized something had to change. This blind pursuit of a bigger net worth number was leading me nowhere, or rather, it was leading me into deeper debt and more regret. I finally started to understand that my approach was fundamentally flawed. My idea of what net worth represented, what it actually meant for my financial freedom, was completely off. So I started from scratch. I ditched the get-rich-quick mindset. I stopped chasing hot tips and began educating myself about actual financial principles. I learned about long-term investing, risk management, and the importance of a diversified portfolio. I shifted my focus from speculation to steady growth, from chasing hype to building a solid foundation. It was a slow, sometimes painful process of unlearning all the bad habits I had picked up. What I came to understand, and what I want to share with you today, is that the traditional net worth formula, assets minus liabilities, it is not wrong. It is just incomplete. It is a snapshot of solvency. A basic accounting measure, it tells you if you own more than you owe, which is important, but it doesn't tell you if you are truly free. It does tell you if your money is working for you in a way that provides real security and choice. It does tell you whether you can comfortably live your life without constant effort or fear. Think about it this way. That formula was designed by accountants. For accountants, it answers the question, are you solvent? Not, are you free? And those are two very different questions. You can have a high net worth on paper, but still feel trapped, still feel stressed about money. I know because I've been there. I had a decent net worth at one point, or so I thought, but I was living paycheck to paycheck, constantly worried about market fluctuations. Always anxious about the next bill that is not freedom, that is just a fancier kind of financial prison. The real eye-opener for me was realizing the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Most people, like I used to, confuse the two. Being rich to me is more about how you experience life. It is about joy, connections, experiences. It is not just a dollar amount. You can live richly with less money if you align your spending with your values, if you prioritize experiences over possessions. I've met people making tons of money who are absolutely miserable, and I've met people with modest incomes who live incredibly rich, fulfilling lives. Wealthy, on the other hand, is about having money that can sustain your life without your constant active effort. It is about having your money work for you so you don't have to work for it forever. And this is where the traditional net worth calculation falls short. It doesn't differentiate between assets that generate income and assets that just sit there or worse, cost you money. This brings me to a concept that truly changed my perspective: investable net worth. This isn't the same as your total net worth, and for most people, the numbers aren't even close. Investable net worth is the portion of your net worth that can actually generate income to pay for your lifestyle without you having to sell off your assets. It is the size of your money machine. Let me break down what I mean because this is crucial. When I was calculating my net worth, I was counting everything: my car, my clothes, my expensive gadgets, even my furniture. And yes, those things have value, but they don't generate income. They don't contribute to my financial freedom. In fact, most of them depreciate and cost me money to maintain. I was essentially inflating my sense of financial security with items that were actually liabilities in disguise. The biggest culprit for many people, and it certainly was for me, is their primary residence. We often told our house is our biggest asset, and it is. In a way, it provides shelter, and it can appreciate in value, but it is not a cash-flowing asset unless you are renting it out, which most of us aren't. It is a lifestyle asset. It is where you live, where you make memories, but it is not actively generating income to cover your living expenses. In fact, it is usually generating expenses, like mortgage payments, property taxes, and maintenance. I remember sitting down with my numbers after realizing this, and it was a humbling experience. I had this inflated idea of my total net worth, but when I stripped out all the lifestyle assets, the things that weren't actively making me money, my investable net worth was significantly smaller. It was a harsh reality check, but an absolutely necessary one. It was like finally seeing the true picture instead of the glossy Photoshop version I had been staring at. Here's a simple way to think about it. Truly wealthy households, the ones who have achieved real financial freedom, often have their primary residence making up a relatively small portion of their total net worth. Sometimes 20% or less. For most of us, though, it is much higher, often 50% or even more. This means if you have $1 million total net worth, but half of it is tied up in your house, your actual money, making capacity is only $500,000. And if you still have a mortgage, that number shrinks even further because you have to keep paying that debt. The composition of your net worth, not just the total number, is what really matters. It is what determines if you can truly retire, if you can choose to stop working, if you actually have a money machine, or just a nice looking balance sheet that doesn't actually do anything for you. Your net worth might have grown because your house value went up, not because you built a solid wealth generating system. And those are two very different things. So how do we calculate this crucial number, this investable net worth? It is simple, but it requires honesty. Take your total assets, but only count the ones that can actually generate income. We're talking stocks, bonds, index funds, ETFs, dividend, producing investments income, generating real estate retirement accounts like your 401k or IRA, brokerage accounts, and business equity that produces cash flow. Then subtract all your liabilities, everything you owe, including student loans, mortgages, credit card balances. The number you are left with, that is your investable net worth. That is the actual size of your money machine. Everything else, your house, your cars, your collectibles, your clothes, those are lifestyle assets. They have value, yes, but they aren't part of the machine that provides you with financial freedom. I know some of you might be thinking, but my house is an asset. It appreciates. I am building equity, and you are. I am not denying that. But here's the critical question. Can you live off that equity without selling your house or taking on more debt? For most people, the answer is no. So while your house provides shelter and comfort, it is not actively feeding your financial freedom. It is a wonderful place to live, but it won't make your car payment when you retire. Let me give you a quick scenario that really drove this home for me. I once knew someone who seemed to have a solid financial picture. A total net worth of $1 million. Sounds great, right? But when we dug into the details, it was a different story. Their residence was worth $600,000, and they still owed $350,000 on the mortgage. The rest was in a 401k. A small brokerage account, and some savings. So while their total net worth was $1 million, their investable net worth after stripping out the house and subtracting the remaining liabilities was only about $300,000 to $350,000. Now, if we use a standard 4% withdrawal rate, a common guideline for sustainable retirement income, that $300,000 to $350,000 would generate maybe $12,000 to $14,000 a year. That is about $1,000 to $1,100 a month. This person thought they had $1 million machine, but what they actually had was a machine generating just over $1,000 a month. That is not retirement. That is a supplement. At best, this isn't a criticism of anyone. It is just a reflection of how misleading the traditional conversation around net worth can be. And this matters, especially when you look at historical events like 2008. Many people had what looked like a positive net worth on paper, mainly tied up in real estate, but it was debt-laden real estate with no liquidity. When the values dropped, jobs disappeared, and they couldn't pay their mortgages. They were bankrupt in real life. Despite their paper wealth, the composition was wrong, and the liquidity wasn't there. Those who made it through 2008 with their wealth intact weren't necessarily wealthier on paper. They just had the right structure, they had liquidity, their investable net worth was real, and it was working for them. So the game we're replaying is just about growing a number. It is about building a money machine that can actually sustain your life. And here's the thing. I want you to calculate your investable net worth. Once you see that number, you can then start to figure out your freedom number. the amount you need to be financially free and support your lifestyle. There are calculators out there that can help you with this, and I highly recommend using one. It will give you a real trajectory and show you what you are actually dealing with. Now, having a clear investable net worth number is just the first step for that number to truly work for you. Three things need to be in place. First, liquidity. Not all investable assets are equally accessible when life happens. And believe me, life always happens. You need to be able to access your money without blowing up your entire strategy. This is where a robust emergency fund comes in. I am talking 9 to 18 months of living expenses, ideally in a high-yield savings account. This money's job isn't to make you rich. Its job is to keep you sane, to protect your investments, and to prevent you from being forced to sell assets at a loss during market downturns. I learned this the hard way, being caught off guard without enough liquid cash, and it cost me dearly when the market drops. The person with a peace of mind fund can just ride it out. The person without one is forced to sell, turning a temporary decline into a permanent loss. Liquidity is what transforms your investable net worth from a static number into a functional money machine. Second, your risk tolerance relative to your timeline. There is no one-size-fits-all answer here. Anyone who tells you otherwise without knowing your age, your financial situation, your goals, and your psychological makeup is probably trying to sell you something. The principle is this: the amount of risk you take on must match the amount of time you have before you need that money, combined with your actual capacity to handle market volatility. I've been there. I built portfolios that kept me up at night. I panicked during market corrections and sold at the worst possible time, locking in huge losses. It cost me millions. Literally, I saw people do the same during the COVID crash, jumping out of the market only to watch it recover without them. When emotions take over, financial intellect goes out the window. Your portfolio should be one you can actually stick with even when things get uncomfortable, because they will get uncomfortable investing. Without experiencing downturns is like driving for 20 years and never hitting traffic. Build a portfolio you can hold on to. That is how you let compounding work its magic. Third, tax location. This is an often overlooked aspect that can make a massive difference in how much money you actually keep. Your investable net worth isn't just about the assets you have, but where those assets live. There are three main buckets. Taxable accounts, like your standard brokerage accounts, offer flexibility and liquidity, but you pay capital gains tax when you sell tax. Deferred accounts, like traditional 401ks or IRAs, offer tax deductions up front and tax-deferred growth, but you pay taxes when you withdraw, and there are age restrictions. And then there are tax-free accounts like Roth IRAs or Roth 401ks, where you contribute after-tax dollars, but the money grows and can be withdrawn completely tax-free in retirement. Also with age restrictions. I personally have a lot in tax-deferred accounts because Roth wasn't an option for me when I started. It just shows how long I've been doing this. This means a significant portion of my retirement withdrawals will be taxed. Where your money lives impacts how much of it you get to keep. Two people with the exact same investable net worth can end up with very different amounts of spendable income based on how their assets are positioned from a tax perspective. So to recap, the three crucial elements for a functional money machine are liquidity, your risk profile, and asset location. These are the things that determine whether your investable net worth actually works for you or just sits there looking impressive on paper. You can just ask how big the number is. You have to ask, is my number built to work for me? Let S bring this all home. The traditional net worth calculation isn't mathematically incorrect. It just answers the wrong question if your goal is true financial freedom. The question that truly matters isn't do I own more than I owe? It is, can what I own generate enough income to pay for my life without me having to sell off pieces of it? Or work until I am utterly exhausted? That question has a different answer. And that answer begins with your investable net worth. Strip out your house, your cars, your collectibles, your clothes, anything that doesn't guarantee a cash flow. Look at what is left. That is your starting point. Then build that number with the right amount of liquidity, a risk level that matches your timeline and temperament, and position it strategically within the correct tax buckets. That, my friends, is your money machine. That is what can give you true freedom. I've sat with people who went through this calculation, and initially they felt deflated. Their $1 million net worth shrunk to $400,000 in a matter of minutes. I understood that feeling because I went through it myself. But here is what I always say, at least now. If your investable net worth is positive at all, even if it is smaller than you thought, you have the capacity to build this. You just needed the right target, the right equation to solve. The math will always work out, but only if you are using the right math in the first place. You don't need to panic.